Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, what actually happened is that my wife initially told me, make this black. So I actually went and stained the whole thing black, and the plan was for this whole box to be black. And then she changed her mind halfway and said, no, make it the same colour as the floor, make it a wood brown. So I panicked and I went and made this a wood brown by simply sanding back this from black and then restaining it brown. Now, I'm no expert at this. This is actually my first project I've ever even tried to do staining with. So what actually happened was, by sheer luck, having it stained black made all of these little crevices become black, and then when I sanded it back and made it brown, what you ended up with is a beautiful black strips with brown on the top, and it became a wonderful effect that actually enhanced the grain. And not only that, if you just stain this whole thing brown now, you'll get this flat brown colour, whereas if you stain it black first, what happens is all these little grains become black, and when you do a gentle sand they still stay black, so you get a much richer texture of the wood. And that, like I said, was by sheer accident. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stain this thing initially black. So let's grab our stain. I'm using Feast Watson Proof Tint, and it's just a black. That's purely a stain. So I'm using a brush. Now, there's 3 rules with staining. Rule number 1 is wear gloves. Rule number 2 is wear gloves. And rule number 3 is wear gloves. Now, these are Ansel gloves that I got for $3 at the supermarket, but they're waterproof. Just washing gloves. Grab our brush. Stick it in there. I'm just going to run it, the black stain, right up into those cracks, all the way up and down, and make sure that those cracks are well filled. The brush, like that. Do not let the stain touch you. It is seriously very, very staining stuff. You'll never get it off your skin, off your clothes, off anything. That's its job. So it does its job very well. I find this brand of stain is one of the best. I've tried quite a few, and I will say that between different brands of stain there is slight different colours, so you really don't want to be swapping halfway through your brand of stain. Choose a brand and run with it for the whole project. And there we go. We've now stained it just with the brush, very quickly, very roughly black. I'm going to let that dry now. Shouldn't take too long to dry. As you can see, I haven't done too good a job. You don't need to get it perfect, because you're going to be sanding that back anyway to get some of that grain coming back through. So there it is. Let's leave it for about 20 minutes or so to dry, and then we'll do some sanding. Alrighty, our black stain is dry, so now we're going to sand it back again, just enough to get that wood grain coming back through. So here we go. Let's just grab a brick, put it there to hold our piece still. You can see I've sat the brick on a bit of Bond's t-shirt there, just so I'm not scratching the actual surface, and that's looking pretty good. I haven't overdone it. I've just sanded it back enough to let some of this, almost like, it looks like a burnt almost look now, come through. Let's grab our trusty moist rag, just give it a bit of a wipe, and you can see that it's coming up. I've done a little bit sloppy along the edges, and that's on purpose. I think that'll look like a really nice effect, that the edges are a bit darker along there, and our grooves have all stayed black, and just our pieces of wood through the middle are looking nice and white coloured. And like I said, this was a sheer accident. I actually had to fix this by sanding back what I thought was going to be a black boxed backwood, so I could actually stain it a brown colour, and I ended up with this amazing effect that made the cheap wood underneath look 10 times better in the end. So that's the big trick, I think, to doing staining. Staining is not complicated. It's ridiculously easy. Anyone can do it. Hell, if I can figure out how to do it, you can do it. Alright, time to stain with our second colour now. And we're using Feast and Watson Proof Tint Jarrah, which I particularly like because it comes out a really nice red colour. And we stain with the rag. Now this is a piece of Bond's t-shirt, one of my old smelly t-shirts. Never throw them out, they're useful for so many things, for your car, for cleaning up messes and for staining. I've cut a small piece only. That's very important, because if you use half of your t-shirt, what happens is when you start rubbing it on, the t-shirt hangs behind, and also the t-shirt absorbs too much of your stain, and you don't end up with a stain on the wood, you just end up with a stained t-shirt. Waste of money. So cut only a small piece and dip it in, and don't use too much stain on your rag. Why? Because you don't want the stain to fall into the black sections, you just want it to run along the top. So don't overdo with the amount of stain that you put on your rag. Just go gently and just scoot it across the top. Now rub it on a couple of times, don't over rub. Now what you do is you rub, I like to rub a little bit more in the centre and push down hard. And see how when you push down hard it actually goes a little bit lighter? It gives the wood a lighter colour through the centre. That's a neat little trick too. So it looks lighter in the centre and a bit darker on the edges. Let's just move our stain across so we don't spill it. Get a bit more. Alright, it's getting a bit darker now, so I've just turned the lights on, but we're continuing on. The idea is not to rub too much. Just put it on once, very quickly, and move on to the next spot. And then if you want to lighten that little area, you turn to the back of the rag and just rub like that. Make that area a bit lighter, because the more you rub, the lighter it's going to make that area. So you don't want to rub too much unless you want to emphasize the lightness in that area. Just keep putting more stuff on, spreading it out through it. There we go. It's looking pretty good. It's looking beautiful and red, isn't it? And you can see that texture of that black now coming through and making that what was really crappy wood look magnificent. It looks like expensive Jarrah. There we go. Now it's time to seal. Okay, so now we've let it dry for about 10 minutes. It's looking pretty dry, I can't see any wet surfaces. Now the last step is sealing it. And the key to sealing, I've discovered, is using a spray. And this is the best spray to use. Cabot's Satin. Not the gloss, not the matte, no other brand. I tell you why, the gloss looks too glossy and it actually looks cheap. And the matte looks too flat and doesn't bring out the sparkle. The satin is in between and it looks plenty glossy enough, trust me. And the key is to use a spray can, not a brush, because when you put a brush on, no matter what you do, it leaves streaks. You don't want a streak, you want it to be a nice, smooth, clean surface. And the key also, I've tried the other brands, the key is Cabot's, because when you spray it, it just sprays evenly, and the paint is such high quality that it just creates all the droplets join together and create a perfectly smooth finish. So don't cheapen out on the spray. And this is just satin clear polyurethane finish. This is the brand to use. Now you don't want to overdo it either, and you don't want to spray it when it's vertical because it'll end up dripping. This stuff is the best for non-drip too. It just makes a beautiful even surface. Let's spray some on. Just spraying it on evenly. Look at how it's just making the surface pop big time. There we go. Looking nice and even. Maybe a bit more in these corners and along there. Let's have a look down with the reflection, see if we can find any spots we've missed. Maybe a little bit along there. A little bit more along the edge there. A bit more in there. That's it. It's looking magnificent. Look at that piece of wood now. From something that was that terrible crappy green to the most magnificent piece of wood. Now let's wait about half an hour for that to dry. Make sure there's no dust flying on it. Just leave it without sanding anything further, or you'll end up with dust sticking to it. Get into all those corners there. Really happy with that. And let's have a look at the finished product in a few minutes. And that's it. There we have it. From this green ugly piece of junk found in someone's front yard at a garage sale, to this immaculate piece of quality looking furniture. Once this box is put together with all of those sides looking like that, it's going to look magnificent in our lounge room. So it's that easy, and you can stain all by yourself. Good luck.